Today's scripture reading comes from Psalm 139, verses 14 through 16, and 1 Peter 3 through 4. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. Do not adorn yourselves outwardly by braiding your hair and by wearing gold ornaments or fine clothing. Rather, let your adornment be the inner self, with the lasting beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in God's sight. These are the words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I want to take a moment before I really dig into the scripture and extend a heartfelt thank you to Reverend Porter for the opportunity to preach this week. Originally, he was going to preach this one, and today's subject of the Mirages is on appearance. When he sat with me and asked if I would like to preach this one, he knew that my immediate answer would be, yes, I never turn down a preaching opportunity. But he had a moment of pause. And that moment of pause was not because he didn't want me to preach this one, but because he knows that this subject isn't just me studying a scripture, but that today's sermon is part of my life story, something I have deeply lived. And so he sat with me in my processing of the person who I was and the person who I now am. And I am humbled today to be able to share some of the deepest parts of me that have been formed, transformed by a God who extends to us a spring of ever-flowing worth. God is our wellspring of worthiness and the oasis from which our value stems from. So here we are in week 2 of the Mirage series. Last week, we looked at Born Thirsty, thirsting for more. What I have is never enough. And we focused in on one of my all-time favorite stories in the Bible, which is the woman at the well. We looked at this beautiful, long conversation between God and this woman whom you wouldn't imagine Jesus would have been talking to. We looked at how Jesus and this woman had this deep conversation around worship, around compassion, and around transformation. And how instead of drawing from the mirage of what has been percolating deep within us, we should draw from that everlasting stream of living water from Christ, who nourishes us, sustains us, and carries us into the depths of an oasis of love and of grace. The woman at the well taught us that when we reach for that mirage, we're reaching into this empty land of sand. And in her wrestling with Jesus, and in her conversation, we learned that the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self go hand in hand. That will carry us through this series together. Mirages are about optics. There are 3 different kind of forms that I introduced you to with the word mirage last week. Mirages are optical phenomena that scientists say we often see and find in the deserts. It's where we think there is this pool of water on the horizon, but if we had dipped our hand into it, we would draw out sand. It's the way that the light and the heat refract and bend together to create this scientific phenomenon. Mirar, one of the root words of mirage, means to wonder at. And les mirar, which is the French version, is mirror. The heart of Mirages, the heart of the series, points us to look in the mirror and reflect the wonder and the awe of God. I praise you, for I am fearfully, awesomely, and wonderfully made. Are there scriptures that you wrestle with? Are there books of the Bible that you just quite can't wrap your mind around? We all have them. I mean, there are 66 books in the Bible. Maybe you struggle with a lot of the Old Testament because the optics of it. My seminary professors taught me, see this not as a vengeful God, but as God ordering chaos. See the grace of that order. Maybe you struggle with miracle stories. How could this miracle happen in Scripture but not in my life? Or maybe you struggle with the Psalms, the only book in the Bible where we turn and we extend our words to God. Because the rest of the 65 are God's words to us. This one, Psalm 139, specifically 14 through 16, they've been part of a lifetime struggle for me because they're reflective of a truth that speaks to the heart of who I am. And it starts with this. Do we believe that we are awesomely made? Do we believe that we have worth and value? Do we believe that we are marvelous, distinguished, set apart with a divine purpose for our lives? See, this psalm takes the lament psalms that come before it, the pain of people's lives, and turns it to praise. From pain to hope, I praise you. You have been ever present. This psalm says, God says to you and to us, I am with you. This is how I understand God, to be in the dirt with us. A God who says, I am the total environment of everything in your life. I am with you always. God is our wellspring. But do we believe that we don't measure up? A couple months ago, I did a mini-series called Enough. I talked to y'all a lot about how in my life I kind of held two things in balance. I am too much or not enough. One of the quotes that really captivated me as I was doing that series was from a book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I said it to you in one of the sermons, and it says that our greatest sufferings in life stem from the lies that we tell ourselves. And we choose to believe. Do we believe that we don't measure up? Do we believe that we don't have enough meat on our bones, as people have said? Or that our eyes squint too much when we smile? Do we believe that we have too much of this or not enough of that? Today's mirage is the mirage of appearance, but specifically the lie that we tell ourselves that I am not beautiful enough. And to know the heart of me and why believing that I am fearfully and wonderfully made was a struggle in Scripture is because I continually fed myself that lie. You will never be beautiful enough. Because especially my middle school years, the mirage of my life was that appearance would carry me to success. As Reverend Porter and I talked through this sermon and the vision of the mirage, we came up with 4 questions to help walk into this. So here are the 4 questions. Do you struggle to focus if you don't look your best? For me, this used to look like, I'm going to dress nice for a test because I'll do better on the test. if I look good? Do you envy or get annoyed or judge those around you who have what you believe you will never gain? Do you spend an inappropriate amount on resources for your appearance? Now, please don't hear me say that it is not okay to dress cute or to wear makeup. That's not what this is about. It's about the heart behind it. What is the optic? What is the reason? What is your why as to why you are investing in those resources? Is it because you are feeding yourself or others are feeding you the lie that you will never measure up? And number 4, do negative comments about your appearance cycle through on replay in your mind? If so, if you answer yes to any of these, we have to address the mirage of appearance as the idol of identity rooted in what we look like. This goes back to one of the scriptures last week, which was the first of the 10 commandments. What are we putting before God? Do we believe that we are awesomely and wonderfully, marvelously made? Or do we believe that what society tells us about how to get ahead is more important than what God has told us since the beginning of who we are? Mirages are just refracted visions of an oasis that draws out sand. And often we make our biggest mistakes and biggest messes when we forget that God created us. It is God who gives us our value and our worth. This was made real for me in middle school, really. I came from what, when you graduate, you call the Homewood bubble. My fellow Homewoodian in here knows what that is. The culture, no, thank you, it affirms. The culture of the community that we were raised in says to make it, you have to look and act a certain way. You have to dress the part to be valued here. For me, it started with cowgirl boots. I love shoes. And growing up, I would wear cowgirl boots every day. It was cowgirl boots and soccer cleats because that defined who I was and what I loved. And I thought at the time that appearance was something that I could use to reflect who I am as a person. And then I got to middle school and I noticed everyone around me talking about wallabies and Sperry's. And I looked at my parents and I said, I need a pair of wallabies and I need a pair of Sperry's. And I looked at those cowgirl boots that I had consistently worn, who reflected my love of country music, my Alabama roots, my family in the country, and I watched them collect dust in the closet as I wore these Sperry's and wallabies that I didn't even think were cute to school to fit the culture, to fit the look, because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to know that I had worth and I had value. And then I realized that I was just drawing up sand, and it would fall through my fingers, and I continued to feel worthless and undervalued, and all that those shoes did was make me blend in with the crowd and be part of the culture that said appearance is how you get to where you want to be. Because societal pressure is a mirage. And the sand will just slip through your fingers if you let it. The next one is before we moved to Georgia. I sat with my former boss, whom I love dearly, and she's a United Methodist pastor, and she was talking to me about some of the struggles that you will face as a woman in ministry. Some of the things that people said to her, some of the interactions that she had, just ways to navigate what I was going to walk into. And she said that her dad gave her a piece of advice. And he said, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. I see head nods as y'all have heard that too. Success is not defined by our outward appearance, but through our inward drive to reflect and mirror the image of God. This brought me to the glass blowing process. A couple years ago, my mom went and she took glass blowing classes, and she made this beautiful flower out of glass. But as I've been reflecting on the Mirage, the sand that you draw up that you believe was an oasis, I thought about how glass begins actually as sand, and that in life we draw up that sand. And as you are making glass, you take the sand and you heat it, and it becomes this molten substance that then someone has to blow air into to create this beautiful form at the end. Well, if we are drawing up sand and we are letting society and culture and appearance mold and shape and form us into who we are, we will just shatter, crack, fall to pieces, not withstand the heat of the world around us. But if it is the Spirit who is blowing that breath into our very being, the places that we're drawing out sand will be formed into these beautiful creations. And I love that it was a flower that she made, because there is a song that was part of my story that talks about making beautiful things in the garden of hope. The flowers remind us, like on the Tillman mural, that there is hope, that the outward appearance reflects the praise of a God who believes that we are awesome, wonderful, and have divine purpose before we even arrive. I talked about middle school a little bit already. Y'all can pull up the picture. A few months back, my home church posted this picture. They were celebrating 25 years of Discovery Weekends. Discovery Weekend, y'all have heard me talk about before if you know me. It is a very formative spiritual retreat that the church and many other churches hold for middle school students. This was a picture of my first year that I went, and because they were celebrating the 25 years, they posted all 25 years of pictures that they had. Reverend Porter happened to find this one, and I am right in the middle with the terrible bangs. And he zoomed in, took a screenshot, and had a little fun with it, as big brothers do. But I texted him back and I said, "You better delete that picture. Those were my awkward years. I look terrible." And he said, "I was going to post this picture and talk about how this church and this weekend and these people raised you to be the pastor that you are now." Well, I still struggle with the mirage of appearance, so he deleted it per my request. But I look at that girl and I think it wasn't actually Discovery Weekend that made me who I am today. Yes, I had an incredible moment, actually that weekend, where as a person who fed herself the lies of "you will never be beautiful enough," I understood this psalm. I am awesome and wonderful because I have been loved and made and valued by a God who values us from the beginning. As Brené Brown says, your worth isn't in the future, your worth is right now as you are. But that weekend was a mountaintop moment that sent me into the oasis of Sunday school, where I said, I want to learn more about the depths of this God who is in the dirt with me, who will turn my broken parts and pieces, who will take the sand that's falling through my fingers and make this beautiful garden out of it. And then in June, my parents sold the home I grew up in. They moved further south. And it was really June that did it for me. I went into the room where I spent most of my childhood, and I sat there and I looked around the room and I prayed. And I said, I praise you, God, for the wonderful and awesome and marvelous times that we had in this house. And I said, but I also am sorry, God, for the amount of times that I tore myself apart in this room. For the moments I said that your creation was not good enough. For the moments that I let the mirage of appearance drive me to sit in who I am now as who I am stuck at being. And then I went into the bathroom, and I took this picture so that I can always hold the memory. And I looked at the mirror, and I said, I wish you had known then who you would become now. I wish you had known who you would be today. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to that 8th grade self who said that you would never measure up. I'm sorry for believing the lies that you didn't have enough meat on your bones, or the lies that your eye was too squinty, or the lies that you'd never be as pretty as your sister. I'm sorry for the suffering that I caused and the moments that you said that who God created you to be wasn't good enough. It was then and there that I thought, part of our divine purpose, one of the most important things that we could ever do, is let the next generation and all the kids to come know as early as possible that their value is not tied to the mirage of appearance or society, but to their identity in a God who will breathe life and breath into their very being in their most broken and vulnerable moments. And it should not take until you're almost 32 years old to be able to say, I'm sorry for the things that I said when you were a child. That is our task. That is why Sunday school is important. It is our job to tell these kids that their value is tied to a God who will always love them, not to a world that will compare them.